Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
San Diego is forecasting a budget deficit next year of more than $250 million. Thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. With service cuts looming, city officials are looking at parking meters to help soften the blow. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more.
After voters narrowly rejected Measure E, a sales tax hike to fund the city government, San Diego is being forced to confront reality. The services the city provides cost more than the revenue it takes in. In an effort to show he's tightening the belt, Mayor Todd Gloria announced a hiring freeze this month, but only for so-called non-essential city staff.
Are you freezing the hiring of parking enforcement officers? Those positions generate $250,000. 30% of them are vacant today, something we've been complaining about for years.
Michael Zuchet is head of the city's largest employee union. He told the City Council Budget Committee last week that filling all the city's parking enforcement officer positions could generate $5 million a year, funds that could pay for services like road repair that would otherwise be on the chopping block. Zuchet added the hourly rate on city parking meters, $1.25, is a tiny fraction of what private lots charge their customers. The city could double those rates in a matter of weeks, he said, and still offer drivers a discount.
We should be looking at any new potential opportunities for revenue, like paid parking at the beach. And while that is not something that can be done by January because it involves the Coast Commission, we should start now.
The city's independent budget analyst found adjusting parking meter rates could generate more than $10 million a year, even more if the city were to add more meters. Mayor Gloria says he agrees parking meters can help fund certain projects and services in times of austerity.
If we can take those revenues and invest them into our transportation department, those neighborhoods that do have meters, so we're doing more road repair, more light repairs, etc., that would be one way to offset or mitigate potential reductions to necessary neighborhood service levels, and that would be something I'd be extremely interested in.
Parking meters are not a panacea for the city's budget woes. The funds can only be spent on parking and transportation projects, and they have to be spent within parking meter zones. Even with the most aggressive parking meter price hikes, the city will still have to cut services to balance its budget. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
It will be a bit of a breezy night, especially through the canyons and the passes. Temperatures will drop down into the mid-40s for a lot of us. Others off to the North Ocean side may be a little bit cooler, but you can see that we're going to be dealing with a mainly dry environment here. Not many clouds with this offshore wind. And the fire danger is still a concern. This Santa Ana event to our north is not as significant as what we had about a week ago, but we still need to keep an eye on things. We're going to talk about what's afoot moving forward in just a bit.
San Diego Unified is set to vote on a resolution tonight to add new protections for families. It would establish SD Unified as a welcoming district. It says the district will prohibit discrimination of any kind and would not assist ICE on campuses without a warrant. SD Unified says it anticipates federal policy changes when President-elect Trump takes office. Our media partner KGTV spoke with California Superintendent about the changes already happening at the state level.
Many districts have asked for guidance. They're not sure what to do. And so we think that this is ironclad clarity that ICE should not be on campus, data should not be shared. Our families should be protected and supported. The revenue should be preserved. And sometimes it takes a law to make that happen.
If indeed the resolution is approved, the district would also provide resources for students and families to help ensure they know their rights. San Diego County Sheriff Kelly Martinez says she will not be following new policy from the Board of Supervisors that limits her cooperation with immigration authorities. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson looked into what's next.
State law allows the Sheriff's Department to help U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in certain ways. even without a judicial warrant. Sheriff Kelly Martinez declined an interview but sent a written statement. She says she has authority over the jails, not the board, and they'll keep doing what they've been doing. A local immigration attorney says that violates state law.
The sheriff has the discretion to cooperate with local law enforcement if, only if it doesn't violate any state policy or local policy.
Ian Soruelo chairs the Immigrant Rights Consortium. He says they've notified the state attorney general of the sheriff's refusal. Martinez says they coordinate with ICE for public safety. They let ICE interview consenting people in their custody with certain convictions and notify ICE of upcoming release dates.
If they are able to show judicial, a warrant signed by a judge, that's not the problem.
Soruelo says they're ready to support a lawsuit if necessary. Board Chair Nora Vargas declined an interview. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Imperial Beach Mayor Paloma Aguirre is in Washington, D.C. today to convince Congress to declare a federal state of emergency in the South Bay. It is the latest push to secure federal funding to address pollution in the Tijuana River Valley. She was joined by doctors and researchers who shared their findings with lawmakers. Mayor Aguirre says this is the last chance to work with the Biden administration, so the time to get it done is now.
We are going to do this as a last-ditch effort before the Biden administration exits. Whatever the concerns have been, there's nothing to lose at this point. They're on the way out.
However, Aguirre says the fight for federal support will continue even after the presidential transfer of power. She and the task force will be in D.C. until Thursday. TikTok is making a last-minute push to avoid a U.S. ban that's set to take effect next month. It's appealing to the Supreme Court after losing earlier legal battles. As Amy Kiley reports, they may also gain support from a powerful ally.
We'll take a look at TikTok.
President-elect Donald Trump is signaling he might reevaluate a pending ban on TikTok. It's set to take effect January 19th, the day before his inauguration. That's unless TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, sells it to a non-Chinese buyer. A source says TikTok's CEO met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Now the president-elect is crediting the social media platform with helping him get reelected.
I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok.
The ban is part of a law Congress passed with bipartisan support that President Joe Biden signed in April. It stems from concerns among lawmakers that ByteDance poses a national security risk. That's because it's a Chinese company subject to the Chinese government.
Trump's going to have a play here, but they did pass a law.
TikTok is suing over the ban. In a filing yesterday, it asked the Supreme Court to intervene. TikTok's attorneys want the justices to review their free speech arguments and give the incoming Trump administration time to weigh in. They're asking the Supreme Court to decide on the emergency appeal by January 6th. TikTok says that would give it time to shut down if it looks like the ban will take effect.
We'll wait to see what the Supreme Court does. I'm assuming they'll weigh in some way because it's a big constitutional issue.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
The phrase brain rot isn't just an internet meme. It's backed up by science. Coming up, how mindlessly scrolling and binge watching can impact our brains. If you're flying during the holidays, it is important to know what you can and cannot bring on board. And if you're traveling with young kids, there are plenty of resources to help you get through the airport. Jen Sullivan breaks it all down.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, but if you're traveling, the holiday season can bring unwanted headaches. And there will be a record number of travelers on the road and in the skies. AAA is expecting more than 119 million people to travel 50 miles or more between Saturday, December 21st and Wednesday, January 1st. Nearly 8 million people will fly, so expect long lines.
If you are checking a bag, I would get to the airport at least 2.5 hours early.
If you need assistance getting through security, and this includes young families, you can request help 72 hours ahead of your trip by filling out a TSA Cares assistance form. People who need assistance and families with kids under 2 can typically board first.
Usually the first people to get called are people who need more time to board.
What happens if your family isn't sitting together?
The gate agent is going to make that change automatically because they're going to see that minors are sitting separately from their guardians.
Many airports also have family restrooms, nursing stations, and even kid play areas to make it easier for families. And parents can bring breast milk and/or formula greater than 3.4 ounces on board. If you're bringing gifts on the plane, the TSA recommends putting them in gift bags instead of wrapping them in case the item needs to be inspected. Gifting a snow globe, if it's bigger than a tennis ball, it likely has more than 3.4 ounces of liquid and needs to be checked. Solid foods like fruitcake, chocolate, and candy canes can all go on board. Items like wine and even maple syrup need to be checked. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
A long-standing nonprofit art space in Oceanside faces eviction and closure. KPBS arts reporter Julia Dixon-Evans takes a look at what this means for artists and for the community.
The day after the Oceanside Pier fire, artist Marisa DeLuca collected fistfuls of charred wood from the beach, a charcoal she could mix with paint.
My work has always been kind of a love letter to Oceanside and to the ancestors of Oceanside. And when that fire happened, it really kind of put kind of an exclamation point on the rapid change in the region.
DeLuca's painting, made with the pier's remnants, is now on view at the Hill Street Country Club, a nonprofit art and community space in Oceanside, founded in 2012. It's the space's final exhibit. The building has hosted countless gallery shows, concerts, workshops, and community events over the years. The building's landlord put it on the market several months ago. Once the sale enters escrow, the gallery will close. It's a situation emblematic of broader changes in Oceanside.
Everything's just very uncertain, and it's the coast, it's by the beach. We're like one of the last coastal cities in California to actually pull off gentrification finally.
Despite Oceanside's designation as a California cultural district, there's little infrastructure to support cultural organizations facing displacement. John Arroyo, a UC San Diego professor of urban studies, says cities must do more.
Could there be an emergency fund to help make a down payment on another property? Could the state, the city, the county evaluate other county-owned properties that are not being used that would allow for sort of the reuse in the cultural center?
Hill Street Country Club plans to continue its work and hopes to secure affordable space elsewhere. Pollinitz wants to stay in Oceanside to continue serving the local community, but would consider other parts of the county. Still, she wishes things had turned out differently. In her view, there was a straightforward solution.
My city would give me a building. It's not that deep. The museum is renting a city building. The theaters are renting a city building. Like, the only folks that are struggling to stay and be sustainable are those who have to pay rent to a landlord.
Julia Dixon-Evans, KPBS News.
Can our immune systems defeat cancer? Maybe so if they have the right diet. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge tells us that T cells that consume acetate can kill more cancer cells.
Imagine your immune system could fight off cancer just like it fights off a cold or a flu. Some scientists are working hard to find ways to shift the immune system into a higher gear to stop cancer using those little pathogen killers called T cells.
So one of the biggest revolutions in cancer treatment right now are new drugs aimed at stimulating and rejuvenating our T cell response against cancer. This has become what we now call the fourth pillar of cancer treatment, what we refer to as immunotherapies.
Sue Keck is a professor and immunobiologist at the Salk Institute. She says a cancer tumor is a tough neighborhood for T cells. It's very suppressive and can just wear them out. But what if you could make those T cells stronger? Keck and her research team learned something very interesting about what T cells use for food. T cells retain their cancer-killing ability, which depends on the right gene expression, when they consume acetate instead of other nutrients.
So the key finding of this research is that we actually found that the way in which our genes are turned on or off can be dependent on which nutrient the cells are consuming.
You are what you eat, she says, especially if you're a T cell, I guess. The challenge is to get T cells to choose acetate as a preferred nutrient. Researchers found you could do this by making sure they had plenty of an enzyme called ACSS2. This was proven in experiments with mice whose T cells got much better at fighting tumors and killing cancer cells. Postdoctoral fellow Shishin Ma was the lead author of a paper on the research published in Science. She says in humans, this process could help attack and control tumors or stop them before they happen.
This can not only be curative, but also preventive.
Overexpression of the key enzyme and inducing cell consumption of acetate could be done through genetic engineering. Shishin says there may also be some dietary steps people can take to encourage the process.
So maybe as a standard of care in the long run, we can let the people specifically eat certain food, and then we can make them more healthier and control tumor better.
Vinegar, for instance, has a lot of acetate, but before you start consuming a lot of vinegar, wait for a few more studies to come out. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Well, it's said to be the most wonderful time of the year, but it can also add some stress. Karen Kafer reports things that create holiday magic for some can be challenging for others.
The holiday season lights up the senses, but Shantae Snellgrove, founder and publisher of Parenting Special Needs magazine, says for some, it can be too much.
There's a lot of sensory overload, which can create a lot of extra stress for the families.
And the winter break from the regular routine of school can also bring challenges for children with special needs.
Changes in routine and schedules and the kind of hubbub that goes along with the holiday season can be difficult.
Snellgrove says to use visual strategies to make the unfamiliar more predictable. Show videos of new experiences and photos of new people and practice what to do if things become overwhelming.
Give them options. If the noise is too loud, or if the lights are bothering you, then please tell mom.
Communication is essential when hosting or visiting during the holidays. Lindsay Nader, Vice President of Services and Supports at Autism Speak, says to offer a helping hand when things don't go according to plan, but understand a child may just need a break.
Sometimes that looks like just providing them space and being warm and accepting and understanding that, just because someone's having a tough time doesn't mean the entire experience is over for them.
And in addition to managing a child's expectations for a new place or event, adults should manage their own for the season.
It's really important to remember that you need to celebrate all successes, and the celebrations might need to look a little bit different and should focus in on what works best for that child.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Few conversations have more landmines than political discussions with loved ones who hold opposing views. KPBS Public Matters reporter Amitha Sharma joins me now for an update on how some San Diegans are navigating these polarizing talks as the holidays approach. Welcome, Amitha.
It's good to be with you, Maya.
Now, you've covered the fractured relationships over President-elect Donald Trump after his first term in office. And now that he's about to enter his second term into the White House, how are these bonds with loved ones faring?
Well, first, a little bit of background. So over the last 8 years, rifts so deep over politics have developed that marriages and friendships have ended. Siblings are no longer talking to each other. Even parents and children have been estranged. And people really feel like they don't have a shared sense of humanity, a shared sense of fairness with their loved ones. And so they believe that disagreements over huge issues like abortion, gun reform, climate change, and healthcare cross moral lines. So when they differ with the people closest to them on these big issues, they feel a sense of betrayal. That said, the last time I covered this issue was at the end of President-elect Donald Trump's first term. Now, as I've revisited it, I will say, and again, this is not a scientific study, but I will say that people are managing, they're navigating these situations a lot better than they did 4 years ago. For instance, I spoke with a guy by the name of Noli Zosa. In the past, he has felt caught in the middle between his mom and his cousin who don't support Trump on one side and his sister who does. So now he says he will only engage politically with family, with his Democratic friends, after reading the situation and deciding whether it's safe to do so.
It's about navigating and knowing people's personalities, and if people can discuss these things rationally, or whether it's a trigger, and it just will just to ruin a meeting or a nice dinner.
Alan Hoving is another local voter who canvassed for Harris in the weeks leading up to the election. He says he did not want to dwell in anger, as some of his friends have post-election. So he actually congratulated a friend from high school who supported Trump. Now, Hoving says he's on a mission to find common ground with people who hold opposing views, to build consensus.
We think that we've been polarized and pulled apart. So now I'm trying to find what are those places and spaces where people are actively coming together to try to solve the common problems.
Conventional wisdom has long said to avoid political discussions with people, but Daniel Post-Senning says otherwise. He is an author and etiquette expert with the Emily Post Institute. He believes people should talk about politics, but be extremely aware and accountable about how they do it.
You can approach the topic with some care. You can acknowledge that it's a difficult topic of conversation. You can test the waters a little bit. You can put out some feelers, maybe share some opinions or open the door to the conversation, but don't just barge through with all your lights flashing right off the bat.
People living in social silos and media silos makes these conversations even more challenging. The biggest source of dissension is that people are operating from different values, says UC San Diego sociologist Kevin Lewis.
And this is another reason these conversations are even more challenging than in the past. Both sides just have a hard time really even conceiving of an alternative, viable perspective.
Very interesting stuff there, Amitha.
And you know, Maya, just building on what Kevin Lewis just said, the one theme that emerged from all of this is, okay, there's an understanding that we don't share the same values, perhaps, but if we don't find a way to really listen to one another and to really hold a space for people with differing views to express themselves freely, then we are going to have a hard time regaining some of the unity that we've lost as a country.
Very sound advice going into the holidays and going into a new term.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, Amitha. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this story is part of our Public Matters initiative. You can learn more about it on our website at kpbs.org/publicmatters.
Well, we do have some offshore winds. It's a dry, downsloping wind, and to a slightly less extent than what we had a week ago. The fire danger is still high, and there are some Santa Ana winds to our north, and the fire danger will be with us until Wednesday. So we need to be very careful out there. Low humidity and offshore wind, a downsloping dry breeze will be a concern. Now, the winds are going to die down, and we will have near-record warmth moving into the region here. Not in all areas, but a few spots, especially Ramona. Ramona has the best shot at a record high or near-record high on Wednesday into Thursday, with some pretty decent warmth here for a day or two. Then we will turn cooler this weekend. Tonight, we're at 47 degrees, clear skies. Nothing too eventful in the city, but again, some of the canyons and passes, particularly north and east, are going to be dealing a little bit of stronger wind that way, and the fire danger is going to be more of a concern in inland portions of San Diego County. The greatest risk overall is into the mountains surrounding the Los Angeles basin, and again, any fire danger still a concern at this point. Moving forward into the day tomorrow, where we have some pretty good warmth here. Places near Escondido, Ramona, El Cajon, unseasonably warm for this time of the year. We have a lot of sunshine with this dry, downsloping breeze. And then as the Pacific storm track pulls north, ultimately leading to drier weather into Portland and Seattle, We will have that warmth build a bit Wednesday and Thursday into Friday for many inland areas here. Very dry, very warm. You can see we're peaking around 76 for the coast. A little warm for this time of the year, sunny and pleasant. We do turn cooler by about 10 degrees from Wednesday down to Saturday, and the clouds return for Sunday. Inland areas, we go from 84 down to 71. Very warm, dabbling near record warm weather for Wednesday and to some extent Thursday in places like Ramona. But again, we're going to drop about 15 degrees between Wednesday and Sunday. Into the mountains we go. Here, the warmth is a little less pronounced, but it will be a beautiful time. Nice time for a hike. We're going to get a little cooler into the weekend. And into the deserts we go, dabbling near 80 on Thursday with some cooling and a little more cloud cover into the day on Sunday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
Oxford's word of the year for 2024 is brain rot, and it refers to the feeling you get after spending hours scrolling through internet content. Medical experts say it's a real condition and very concerning. Jen Sullivan explains how binge watching affects our brains.
Many of us are guilty of it, mindlessly binge scrolling through internet content. But could that be doing damage to our brains? Medical experts say it can cause what's referred to as brain rot.
It's a real thing, and it's concerning for a lot of people.
Medical experts say consuming long stretches of low-quality content online can trigger cognitive decline, brain fog, and shorten our attention span. But overindulging in internet content can cause even more severe symptoms like depression in teens.
More than 3 hours a day for teens seem to double their risk of depression.
So how does excessive binge watching impact our brains?
It tends to thin certain areas of the brain called the cortex that is responsible for your memory and your perception.
What can we do to prevent brain rot? Limiting our screen time can help. The most recent survey from Pew Research Center asked a group of teens ages 13 through 17 about their tech usage. 95% say they have access to a smartphone. 46% say they use the internet almost constantly. But it's not just a teen problem. A different Pew survey found that 90% of adults say they use the web daily, and 41% say they are online almost constantly. Medical experts say it's important to keep track of how much time you spend online to prevent binge watching. For Health Minute, I'm Jen Sullivan.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.